So Liz, what an honor to have you today. I want to thank you so much. And on behalf of SETSI, we thank you for your leadership today.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Awesome. So as always, we begin by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So if you can please do us the honors by introducing yourself to our listeners and viewers and tell us about your amazing work.
Sure. And thank you for that beautiful acknowledgement. It was very thoughtful, and I appreciated that. My name is Liz Mulholland. I'm the CEO of Prosper Canada, and we're a national charity that works to build economic opportunity for people with low incomes in Canada through program and policy innovation. And essentially, we work with partners in every sector, government, business, and community organizations, to develop and promote financial policies, programs, and resources that will help people with low incomes measurably build their financial stability and well being. And right now, we're in the process, as Victor mentioned earlier, of expanding access to free financial help services for people with low incomes to every region in Canada. And our goal is serving 1 million people over the next 5 years and helping them connect to an additional $2 billion in income by connecting them to tax and income benefits that they were eligible for, but just not receiving before.
Wow, that's amazing. And I know it really helps to ease the pressure off of people who, and it's the number is growing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It
It
really
is.
is
It is.
growing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So the
People are
pressure
under
is
a
on.
lot of stress right now. A lot of
Absolutely.
stress.
So where does your passion come from? Like what's your motivation behind it? We're curious.
Personally, I think I've always understood that my mission in the world is, as the Jewish philosophers say, is to mend the world. So I want to transform people's lives for the better, but at a very large scale. So I've always been drawn to roles where there's an opportunity to learn how to do that and to apply that effort. And in terms of uh, the particular role I'm in now, we have the opportunity through scaling up high quality free financial help for people with low incomes to really make a transformative difference in people's lives and help put them on the path from poverty towards moving towards financial stability, more security, and ultimately prosperity. So, and we do that by starting by meeting them where they're at, understanding their situation, their context, and then helping them advance their goals without judgment. So, um, I think the other thing that inspires me is my team. They're a small but mighty group of people who are passionate, innovative, collaborative, bright, and just amazing at what they do. So, I always say if I had to be stranded on a desert island, these are the people I want to be stranded with, because they're all great company, but they work amazingly together as well. And they are all intent on the same mission. Um, and I think the final thing that really inspires me in my work is just the growing number of committed partners in every sector. As we've reached out, so many organizations, businesses, government people have said, yes, we want to help you do this. And they've kind of leveraged their unique abilities and contributions that they can bring from their perspective, um, uh, and have been willing to kind of embark on a long term partnership with us to kind of really move the dial for people with low incomes and to take what was really just an idea 13 years ago when we introduced financial empowerment into Canada and to turn it into, wow, there's really a rapidly growing field with increasing professionalization, more data, more impact, more scale, et cetera. So it's very exciting.
Absolutely. Well, we hear it definitely, and we see what you're doing. So we thank you so much for your service. So now on the other side, like what challenges or barriers have you faced in your work, and how are you able to overcome them, or in the process of overcoming them?
Yeah. Yeah. They never really go away. But we get better at dealing with them, I think. And The biggest one I think we have, and I think this is shared by many people in the social sector, is the opportunities we see to make change exceed our capacity to seize them. So we've had to become really more disciplined about really prioritizing what we do. And we're a backbone organization. So we're working across an entire ecosystem, which is rapidly changing and evolving all of the time. So there's complexity to really, in any given moment, saying where's our energy best placed, but not running around like chickens with their head cut off, but being nimble enough to see windows of opportunity opening, or to realize when something you had hoped to achieve is just not going to happen because the conditions aren't right now, and you're going to have to move that onto a slower track. So the way that we do that is we have an annual planning process where we really focus on key objectives and key results we want to achieve that year, and we monitor that. But we also every quarter review that plan and decide whether we need to make changes to that because the environment or partnerships, et cetera, are evolving and new opportunities are opening up, but other doors are closing. So that way we try to maintain a certain level of nimbleness, but still having clear goals and objectives that we're working towards and that we're aligning all of our resources and partnerships around. I think the other big issue that, again, that we share with many organizations in the nonprofit sector is the prevalence of short-term funding. Many funders only want to fund for a year, maybe two at the outside, and the desire of many funders to each fund their own distinct project. So they want their own thing, which is not a really efficient way to operate if you're trying to make progress on a big uh, problem. Uh, so the way that we deal with that, and we call this our fundamental business model challenge, is we have a lot of different strategies, but one of the ways that we deal with it is really focusing on building longer term relationships with funders in all sectors. And over time, as they build more confidence in us and we consistently deliver on what we say we're going to do, is they become more confident about making longer term investments in our work and saying, okay, we're ready to move to a 3-year funding commitment. And they also tend to increase their funding too over time. So that's one way that we deal with it. The other way is that we've been building we have, you know, four main programs in our organization. Is we build multi-year program plans, and then we encourage funders not to try and have their own thing, but to co-invest in those 3 or 4 plans with other funders. And that way they're going to get more impact and scale and leverage from their investment than trying to have their own special thing. And that's actually, over time, many funders start out and we want our own project, but over time they migrate to being willing to be co-investors in a larger program with others. And I would say part of building that confidence and then being willing to go there is making sure that we're building on common ground when we select funding partners. So we really do have shared priorities, making sure that we can demonstrate measurable impact and reporting consistently on that. um, Really kind of reminding them that they're getting more bang for their dollar, so to speak, by co-investing with others and showing them how that's the case. And then being really serious about scaling our impact, which is very challenging for many people and organizations. It's not an easy thing to do. And then the final thing is we really aimed at never had any surprises for funders. If something's not going the way we planned, if something has come up, there's a problem, we proactively communicate with them and let them know what's happening and then talk to them about how we go forward together. So, and that, it's just good relationship management, but it pays off, I think. So, and finally, the third challenge I'd say that we have, which is a very different one, is in our field, which is really looking at household financial vulnerability and who it impacts, and the disparities across different groups of people and the impact of intersectionality. Uh, there are huge data gaps in Canada. We have far less data on this than many other countries do, or peer countries. And it makes it hard to understand who's impacted, how they're impacted, what's driving these disparities, and then to develop really evidence-informed solutions, whether it's at the program and service level or upstream policy and regulatory change. So um, one of the silver linings of the pandemic, if you can say that, was that it actually partially solved this problem for us, and that the federal government and other financial sector stakeholders started collecting and publishing far more data and research on this, because it was obvious that there was going to be a lot of financial vulnerability coming out of the pandemic. We're still missing good disaggregated data, though, on different subpopulations so that we can understand the impacts of intersectionality and the disparities around particular subgroups, and what's driving those. So that's kind of the next frontier. And the way that we deal with that is we continue to raise issues to financial policymakers and regulators that we're seeing on the ground from all of our community partners. We roll up what they're telling us about these are emerging issues, these are problems, these are issues with delivery of government programs, services, financial products, services. And we really encourage them to investigate them more thoroughly and to start collecting data and research. And we also engage StatsCan and other research bodies to help inform their work and try to have partnerships there and to collaborate, and with academic researchers as well. And then we conduct our own research to fill some gaps where we can in terms of doing qualitative, observational, and evaluation of different programmatic approaches and stuff. So, and then we always share those insights and kind of, questions or next steps or obvious solutions that might come out of those, with their stakeholders and other sectors.
Yeah, it definitely touched on some very key points, and things that need to be considered moving forward in such a sector, and a very crucial sector, especially we're dealing with also the shakiness of housing as well, which
Yeah,
is another
a huge
dynamic too.
driver.
So they definitely go together.
Yeah, and I think
So
that raises a good point about the need for us to be linking with and being a good ally to people who are working a little bit one step removed from us, but on some of the root causes that are driving the financial vulnerability. So we try to always look out and see who else is working on these issues, maybe not exactly where we are, but adjacent,
right.
and saying, how can we amplify their messages? Can we sign on? Can we support what they're trying to achieve? And linking them into our work where there's interest in collaborating. But we can't just stick to our narrow knitting. We have to
Right.
be an ally to the other organizations out there that are working at these problems, but from different vantage points.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So what are some of the key priorities you're working on, or anything that you want to amplify with us right now?
Yeah, I think right now we really are, we're in the process of really scaling up access to these free financial help services. And when I say financial help, I'm talking about free year-round tax filing assistance for people with low incomes, assistance with their benefits, so filling out benefit applications, but also preparing for benefit reviews, resolving issues that come up with benefit providers, and then free financial counseling for people who have urgent financial problems, and coaching for people who have more financial stability but want to some help setting financial goals and building action plans to pursue those. So, um, so what we were successful in securing a very large federal government commitment in the last budget, $60 million over 5 years to scale up our free financial help hub model. So we issued an RFP in April to invite proposals from community nonprofits that wanted to deliver these services. And we're in the process now of selecting the community partners that we'll move forward with. And in the fall, we'll be announcing those and then working to build capacity if there are any training needs that they have in some of the service areas, and then getting that service system off the ground. So that's a big lift, but we're very excited and super excited by the fact that we had 380 applications, far more than double what we had anticipated, which is really encouraging that so many organizations see the need for this type of support for people and are already starting to do that work. So our job is to get behind them. And then in parallel to that, we continue to do policy and regulatory advocacy work to work on those upstream solutions to address systemic and institutional barriers that prevent people with low incomes from building financial well-being, and also things that governments can do to more proactively support people to build their well-being. And so we have been working with partners from an advisory committee of folks from across the financial sector and from various levels of government and the community sector on addressing this broader gap in Canada in access to trustworthy and affordable financial help services for people with low incomes who really have distinct financial help needs from people who are middle or upper income, and are not particularly well served by professionalized financial services that somebody who has more resources might access. So we put out a report last year that framed the problem and defined it and its drivers. And now we're working on a solution framework that outlines how the financial sector, how governments at different levels, and how community sector organizations can help to close this gap. We're really looking forward to releasing that this fall and then building more partnerships with folks in all three sectors to move the work forward.
Awesome. We thank you again for this. We know it's not easy because we have our mental health, our physical health, and it gets tied into when we deal with people who are challenged in certain areas, really pulls on your heartstrings. So, I know it's not an easy feat. So we appreciate you so much.
Yeah, and I have to give a shout out to our community partners are really the ones at the front line doing the hard work. And I know we have heard that as financial vulnerability is deepened in Canada, that it's taking a real toll on the frontline workers because the pressure on them to solve people's problems and realizing the consequences if they can't. And people are presenting with much broader array of problems and much deeper financial problems than they did even a few years ago. And so it's really putting a lot of stress on those frontline workers who can't always solve them or don't have the resources to meet all the growing need in their community and are forced to turn people away, which is a terrible experience for somebody who's in the helping services at the front line. So we're very excited to be bringing more resources to this work. And we're very grateful for the federal government for investing in solutions, but also to our partners in the financial sector and the foundations who are also investing money to help us scale and continue to innovate, particularly to reach really underserved populations. So Indigenous communities, Black Canadians are a priority population for this initiative, and also Canadians with people with disabilities across the country. So.
Right. Amazing. So with that now, let me ask you, and you be as honest as you want to be, is like, how do you feel about the future of social impact in Canada?
I'm an incurable optimist, so I always feel like there's huge potential, and there are amazing people that are going to help realize it. But I would say, though, at this moment, we're seeing this great surge of, well, Canada's in a moment, let's put it that way. We feel that we're in peril. There's great risk, but also there's a sense that there's a great opportunity to turn the country around and to really start building for more prosperity and more inclusive economy. I'm a little worried that a lot of the focus is on the strict economic agenda, the infrastructure, the productivity, the trade, all of that is important, and people are right to focus on it. But I'm worried that there's a bit of a deafening silence on the other complementary side of the equation, which is our community supports, which are under increasing pressure at the same time as Canadians are feeling pinched, more and more pinched financially, the philanthropic resources are declining. So community services are under more stress, more demand, fewer resources, and they're also not at the table at the national level being invited into this conversation to say, okay, what is the role of your sector and how can we work with you and support so that you can play your part in helping Canada seize this moment and move forward and get us out, turn the corner on this moment we're in. So I think part of our job as community leaders is to be raising that with government and with financial sector and saying there's there's another sector here that needs to be brought into this conversation, and we need to be looking at this holistically.
Exactly. There's an African proverb says, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go
Yeah,
far, you go
yeah,
together, right? And
exactly.
you'll see that there is a gelling. There is that. I always used to say that, we're a part of the puzzle. We're part of a whole
Mhm.
puzzle. So it's not just one piece, it's a whole collective.
Yeah,
So that's what this is all about. And to me, you like what the work that you're doing cannot go without the housing, which cannot
yeah,
go without
yeah,
food sovereignty, and
yeah,
everything just kind of gels together, right?
yeah.
So, yeah, it
And
just makes
all the
sense.
government policy in the world is not going to help on trade and, economic development if people, are just struggling to make ends meet and can't invest in their own human capital, can't get retrained, can't go
That's
back to
it.
school, don't have the capacity to spend time on job search or upskilling. We need to
That's it.
really, we have to walk, chew gum, and I don't know, do a
Tap
third
yourself
thing
on
at the
the
same
top of the
time.
head. I don't
I don't
know.
know. Yeah. But,
Exactly.
but really, any major societal problem we have requires that all three sectors be working together and in concert to solve it. Over and over and over again, we see that. And so it's the job of every sector to say, I want to partner with the other two. I want to learn how to be a good partner to you, and we need to move forward together on this.
That's it.
So so that's what we try to model in the world. And when we do that, we see a lot of progress. So
Right. So would you say, like, what would be the ultimate success? Would that be one of them? What would be your ultimate success, and what does that look like? Like your ultimate
yeah,
goal and your success?
our
Yeah.
ultimate goal would be um, that everybody in Canada, regardless of income or whether your ethnicity, your ethnocultural background, your age, your wealth, or where you live in this country, remote, rural, urban, you have access to the financial policies, products, and services and advice that you need to build your financial well-being, and that there are no barriers, there are no systemic, institutional barriers in your way, and that we are able to see where people are not experiencing that and to quickly mobilize around solutions. Right now, we don't have the data that we need to see as well as we should, and that's slowing down solutions. So um, that's the ultimate goal.
Perfect. Perfect.
Mhm.
Well, this has been very, very powerful. It really sets a stage to where we are, where we need to be. You're saying you're optimist. I can say so as well because I have hope and faith in the next generation. Because,
Mhm.
we are laying a foundation, we're putting in the work, boots on the ground, but we know that the next generation is looking at us and we're going to have to eventually leave bags with them.
Mhm.
So, are they bags of coal or bags of gifts? What are we leaving
Yeah,
for the next generation to carry on this mission and to eradicate these
mhm.
terminologies as
Yeah,
low income. It just should be
yeah,
fair and equal income. Like these words, verbiages should be changed around and adjusted and improved, as time goes on. So we can only hope and pray for that. So my last
yeah,
question for you is
uh-huh,
any closing thoughts or calls to actions at this time?
yeah. I think in this moment, we should be very bold in our aspirations for Canada and for Canadians and not be afraid to set big goals to turn things around, to transform where things are not working for people. The world is changing rapidly, and that we should not be afraid to set bold aspirations and to mobilize around them. But I think we should at the same time uh, not turn up our noses at incremental progress towards those goals. Every journey is one step at a time. So build partnerships, leverage what every sector does best, and respect the constraints that they operate under. And if we do that and we build strong partnerships and we align around bold aspirations, I think Canadians are admired around the world for their ability to collaborate and to work together to move things forward, good things forward. it is part of our secret sauce as a country. And it's why people like working with us in other countries. Not everybody, but so I think we should leverage that in this moment. And everybody should be asking themselves, how do I make myself part of this solution? At whatever level they operate at, wherever they are, how am I helping to move things forward?
Absolutely. We all have to roll up our sleeves at this point because it could get out of hand. And I think it's slowly turning in that way. I mean,
Mhm.
my goodness, we can't even get Canada to stick together. They all they all want to
Yeah.
divorce from each other. So we got a lot of work to do, but we're hopeful for sure.
Yeah. And I
Uh,
think there's a small minority of people who
yeah,
are focused on what divides us. I think if we
right.
focus on where we have common ground, if that's your
Yes.
starting point, you will
Yes.
make things better. And I think most
Absolutely.
Canadians are there already, honestly.
Right. Oh, that's great. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, Liz, I appreciate you on behalf of SETSI. We appreciate you and all your hard work. We wish you nothing but much more success and more wins for what you're doing because it is so important. And we honor you and we definitely thank you for your leadership.
And thank you and Setsi for all of your work. One of the great joys in this work is learning about other great organizations and finding ways that we can work together. And I hope that we can do more with Setsi and continue to be partners in our respective journeys. It's nice to walk alongside others as we move forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
You're welcome. So we will close the way that we began by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. We also acknowledge our ancestors. We acknowledge all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Liz, I'm sure it's not a goodbye. I'm sure we'll see each other again on some Zoom somewhere.
We will, and hopefully in person too.
Yes, in person. That's right. That's right. Thanks so much again,
Okay.
Liz. We'll take
Thank
care.
you.
Eh?
It was lovely to
All right,
meet
all
you,
the
Matt.
best. You
Bye
too,
bye.
dear. Bye bye.